Ladies and gentlemen, stop for a moment and ask yourself how much of your life have you spent justifying your choices to people who will never truly understand. Every explanation, every defense, every apology takes energy from your purpose and power from your potential. What if I told you that the moment you stop explaining yourself, everything changes: your confidence, your influence, and the way the world responds to you? Today, I'm going to show you why silence and action speak louder than any explanation ever could, and why the people who matter will start noticing without a single word from you. Ladies and gentlemen, what if I told you that one of the most liberating decisions you could ever make is to stop explaining yourself? To stop justifying your choices, your dreams, your values to people who will never truly understand them. Every day, we find ourselves trapped in the exhausting cycle of needing to prove why we do what we do. We explain our goals, our priorities, our failures, hoping that validation will come from someone else. But here's the truth: it never truly comes from outside, it comes from within. When you stop explaining yourself, something extraordinary happens. You reclaim your energy, your focus, and your clarity. You no longer spend precious time and emotional currency trying to make people understand a perspective they are not ready to grasp. And in doing so, you send a quiet, powerful message. You are secure in your decisions. You are grounded in your purpose. You are not a reflection of someone else's expectations. Consider how often we dilute our vision in order to appease others. We soften our ideas, we water down our ambitions, we apologize for thinking differently, and in that process we lose momentum, we lose confidence, and worst of all, we lose ourselves. The world does not need you to justify why you are pursuing your path. It needs you to show up fully, to act intentionally, and to lead by example. When you act without explanation, the people who are meant to follow you will notice. They will not need a lecture or a lengthy reasoning. They will observe your consistency, your integrity, your courage. Actions speak far louder than words ever could. If you are consistently doing the work, making the sacrifices, showing up with your full presence, people cannot help but pay attention. And more importantly, they will respect you, not because they understand you completely, but because they see your authenticity. There is a power in silence, in letting your results speak for themselves. You don't have to convince anyone of your vision. You don't have to defend your choices. When you stop explaining yourself, you create space for genuine connection. The right people, the ones who resonate with your mission, who share your values, will step closer. The ones who don't will naturally step away. And this is not rejection, it's clarity. It is a way of aligning yourself with what truly matters and freeing yourself from what does not. I want you to imagine what your life would feel like if you no longer carried the burden of explanation. Imagine the confidence you would have if your decisions were made based on principle, not permission. Imagine the energy you would reclaim by investing it in your growth, your purpose, and your impact, rather than trying to gain approval. Imagine the clarity that comes from living a life guided by your own understanding of right, not by someone else's interpretation. And here is the paradox: when you stop explaining yourself, people suddenly begin to understand, not because you talked more, but because you acted with conviction. They begin to see your integrity, your clarity, your commitment, and your influence grows not through persuasion, but through example. You stop trying to be understood, and instead you simply show up, and the right people, the right opportunities, and the right recognition naturally follow. This is the essence of leadership, the essence of living with purpose, the essence of building a life that is true to who you are. It is not about defending every choice, it is about showing up fully in every moment, confident in the knowledge that your actions are louder, more powerful, and more meaningful than any explanation ever could be. When you embrace this, you will discover that freedom is not about removing obstacles, it is about removing the need for permission. It is about acting from your own sense of purpose, and in that space, remarkable things happen. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop seeking validation from those who will never give it. You stop apologizing for your ambition, your vision, your life. And suddenly, the world pays attention not because you explain yourself, but because you lead without compromise. And as you step into this space, you will notice something even more profound: peace. Not the fleeting kind that comes from approval or temporary validation, but the deep, unshakable peace that comes from living authentically. You begin to realize that the more you explain, the more you dilute your own power. Each explanation carries with it a subtle invitation for debate, criticism, or dismissal. But when you choose silence and action over justification, you reclaim control over your energy, your focus, and your emotional well-being. Think about the moments in your life when you tried to explain yourself and it didn't work. How exhausting it was to argue, to persuade, to seek understanding from someone who was not ready or willing to see things from your perspective. Every time you justify your choices to someone else, you give them power over yourself, worth, and yet we do it repeatedly, thinking that their recognition somehow validates our existence. The truth is, no external approval can ever replace internal clarity. When you are rooted in your values, aligned with your purpose, and confident in your decisions, the need to explain yourself vanishes naturally. This doesn't mean that communication is unimportant. It doesn't mean that relationships, collaboration, or teaching are irrelevant. What it does mean is that there is a difference between explaining to educate, to inspire, or to collaborate, and explaining to defend, to appease, or to justify. The first builds connection, the second depletes it. Leaders, innovators, and those who make a lasting impact understand this distinction. They act with integrity and purpose, and they let their work, their character, and their results carry the weight of proof. Imagine the people in your life, the colleagues, friends, or even strangers who constantly demand explanations. How often do their questions stem from genuine curiosity versus judgment? When you stop giving unnecessary explanations, you no longer feed the cycle of doubt or criticism. Instead, you create space for understanding that is organic, earned through observation and not forced through words. The right people, those who share your vision, values, and principles, will naturally gravitate toward you. The wrong people will drift away without friction, and this natural filtering process is a gift, a way of surrounding yourself with those who truly belong in your journey. And here is another truth: when you stop explaining yourself, you stop shrinking. You stop apologizing for your ambition, your clarity, and your confidence. You stop trying to make others comfortable at the expense of your own growth. Every time you justify a decision you already know is right, you betray your own courage. But when you act without explanation, you stand tall, rooted in self-respect and unshaken by the opinions of others. Confidence does not come from convincing others. It comes from being in alignment with yourself. And alignment creates momentum, the kind that propels you forward in ways that words never could. You will also find that people begin to respect you more deeply, not because you sought their approval, but because you demonstrated integrity, consistency, and authenticity. There is an invisible magnetism in those who live without excuse. People are drawn to certainty, to purpose, to unwavering commitment. When you act decisively, even in the face of skepticism, the world begins to take notice, not because you tried to persuade them, but because your actions speak for themselves. Influence grows naturally when it is rooted in authenticity, and influence is far more lasting than any temporary validation that explanation could provide. As you embrace this approach, you will realize that the need to explain is often a mask for fear, the fear of rejection, failure, or being misunderstood. By stepping beyond that fear, you reclaim your freedom. You no longer live under the weight of expectation, judgment, or the imagined opinions of others. Every choice you make becomes a reflection of your principles, not a response to someone else's standards. And this is the essence of empowerment: choosing to live according to your truth, trusting in your instincts, and letting your results tell the story. Living without explanation also amplifies clarity. When you stop justifying your path, your focus sharpens. Decisions become easier because they are guided by purpose, not by the desire to satisfy others. Energy that was once spent on defense or persuasion is redirected toward action, growth, and impact. Momentum builds naturally when your attention is fully devoted to meaningful pursuits rather than wasted on attempts to convince the unconvinced. And here's the most powerful part. As you cultivate this mindset, you inspire others to do the same. People are watching even when you think they are not. Your courage to live unapologetically without explanation sets a standard. It challenges others to examine their own habits of justification and validation seeking. Leadership is not about giving permission, it is about modeling possibility. By showing up with clarity, purpose, and unwavering commitment, you create a ripple effect. Others begin to see that they too can step into freedom, live boldly, and act without the need for endless justification. Every day that you choose action over explanation, confidence over doubt, authenticity over approval, you strengthen the foundation of your life. You cultivate a sense of self that is resilient, grounded, and unshakable. You stop negotiating with doubt and start building with conviction. You stop seeking external validation and begin creating internal certainty, and in doing so, you unlock the true power of your presence, influence, and potential. As you continue on this journey of living without explanation, you begin to notice a subtle but profound shift in the way you interact with the world. People who once drained your energy with constant questioning, judgment, or unsolicited advice begin to lose their grip. Their opinions, once heavy and overwhelming, no longer hold power over your decisions. You start to realize that the weight you've been carrying all these years, the need to defend your choices, the anxiety of being misunderstood is completely optional. Freedom is not found in approval, it is found in self-trust, and self-trust is cultivated through action, not words. Every choice you make without explanation reinforces your internal authority. You no longer rely on others to validate your ideas, your passions, or your vision. You trust yourself enough to make decisions, take risks, and move forward even when others question or doubt you. This is not arrogance, it is clarity. It is the clarity that comes from understanding your values, aligning your actions with your purpose, and committing to a course that is uniquely yours. When you act from this place, hesitation fades, fear diminishes, and momentum accelerates. You become a force that is defined not by what others think, but by what you are willing to do. And here is an essential truth. The people who are meant to be in your life, who share your values and resonate with your vision, do not require explanations. They will see your commitment and understand it without words. They will witness your integrity, your courage, and your consistency, and it will speak volumes. This is the power of authenticity. It attracts what is aligned with you and naturally filters out what is not. By choosing action over justification, you stop trying to manage perceptions and start living in alignment with reality. Imagine the level of energy you reclaim when you no longer feel obligated to explain yourself. Time that was once consumed by debates, defenses, or apologies is now redirected toward building, creating, and achieving. You begin to invest in growth rather than approval, impact rather than recognition. Every hour you spend acting decisively, without explanation, compounds into momentum, confidence, and measurable progress. The world responds not to excuses or justifications, but to results, persistence, and the quiet but undeniable power of someone who shows up consistently and unapologetically. This mindset also changes the way you deal with criticism. Criticism is inevitable, especially when you are doing something meaningful or challenging. But when you live without explanation, criticism loses its sting. You no longer feel compelled to defend your choices or convince detractors of your intentions. Instead, you listen objectively, discern what is useful, discard what is irrelevant, and continue forward with conviction. Your energy is preserved, your focus is sharpened, and your impact is multiplied. There is also a transformative effect on relationships when you adopt this approach. Connections deepen with those who truly understand and value you. Superficial or draining relationships naturally fade, not because of conflict, but because they are no longer reinforced by your need to explain or defend yourself. You create a space where mutual respect and genuine understanding thrive. and where people are drawn to your integrity rather than your attempts to justify your actions. In essence, by ceasing to explain, you invite authenticity into your environment, both from yourself and from those around you. Consider the freedom that comes from abandoning the compulsion to explain. You no longer shrink to make others comfortable. You no longer compromise your values to avoid confrontation or criticism. Every decision becomes a reflection of your principles and priorities, not a negotiation for approval. This freedom is a form of empowerment that transforms your daily life. It allows you to take bold steps, embrace opportunities, and navigate challenges with confidence, knowing that your worth is not contingent upon anyone else's understanding. And with this freedom comes influence. The paradox is that the less you try to convince, the more people are drawn to you. Your example becomes your message. People are inspired not by your explanations, but by your courage, your clarity, and your unwavering commitment. Leadership is less about convincing others and more about modeling what is possible. When you act decisively without apology, you show others that it is possible to live with integrity, courage, and focus. Your influence grows organically, fueled by authenticity, not by persuasion. Finally, living without explanation nurtures resilience. Life will always present challenges, setbacks, and misunderstandings. But when you are grounded in self, trust, and aligned with your purpose, external pressures lose their power to destabilize you. You face adversity with a calm confidence, knowing that your path is your own and that your energy is reserved for what truly matters. Each decision made without justification strengthens your resolve, sharpens your focus, and reinforces the unshakable belief that your life is yours to live, not theirs to critique. Every step you take without explanation is a step toward mastery over your own life. You stop negotiating with doubt, fear, or the opinions of others. You start investing fully in your vision, your growth, and your impact. You cultivate a presence that commands respect, inspires action, and leaves a legacy defined by results, not by words. In this space, you discover the true power of living authentically, acting decisively, and leading without compromise. And as you continue to live without explanation, you begin to notice how your perception of fear itself begins to change. Fear often disguises itself as the need to justify, to defend, or to convince others of your choices. But when you step beyond that compulsion, fear loses its ability to control you. You start to see that the real risk is not in taking bold action. It is in shrinking, in diluting your potential, and in allowing the opinions of others to dictate the course of your life. Every time you act decisively without explanation, you train yourself to move forward despite discomfort, uncertainty, and doubt. You cultivate courage as a muscle, and each act of silent conviction strengthens it. The world will always have opinions, judgments, and criticisms ready for you. But when you stop explaining yourself, you stop giving those voices weight. You no longer live in a constant state of negotiation with the world. Instead, you anchor yourself in your principles and your purpose. This is the difference between living reactively and living intentionally. Living without explanation means your energy is spent creating, building, and impacting, not defending, justifying, or rationalizing. And over time, this shift in energy transforms every aspect of your life. One of the most profound changes you will notice is in your self-perception. When you stop seeking validation from others, you begin to cultivate a deeper, more authentic confidence. You no longer need others to tell you that your decisions are right. You trust your judgment, your instincts, and your ability to navigate challenges. This is the kind of confidence that is not dependent on applause, recognition, or agreement. It is steady, unshakable, and rooted in the knowledge that you are acting in alignment with your own values. Living without explanation also revolutionizes the way you approach opportunities and risks. When you are no longer preoccupied with what others think, you are free to pursue what truly matters. You take calculated risks because they align with your purpose, not because you need permission or approval. You embrace opportunities with clarity and conviction, and you are willing to face failure as a learning experience rather than a judgment on your worth. Action becomes your language, and progress becomes your proof. Furthermore, you begin to realize the power of presence. When you are not consumed with explaining yourself, you are fully present in your interactions, your work, and your life. You listen more deeply, observe more clearly, and act with intention. This presence is magnetic. People are drawn to those who are fully engaged, not because they are seeking approval, but because their authenticity resonates. Your influence grows naturally through the example you set, rather than the arguments you make. This approach also reshapes the way you handle criticism and conflict. Criticism is inevitable, especially when you are pursuing meaningful goals, but when you live without explanation, criticism no longer destabilizes you. You can discern what is useful and discard what is irrelevant. You respond with clarity and calm, rather than defensiveness or anxiety. Your focus remains on action and impact, not on managing perceptions. This is how leaders, innovators, and change makers operate. They are guided by purpose, not by fear of judgment. Living without explanation creates an environment of respect around you. People begin to recognize that you are not swayed by opinion or influenced by pressure. Your consistency, integrity, and quiet confidence command attention and admiration. The right people, those who value authenticity, clarity, and courage, naturally gravitate toward you. The wrong people, those who thrive on control or skepticism, naturally distance themselves. This is not a loss. It is a form of alignment that preserves your energy for what truly matters. And perhaps most importantly, living without explanation cultivates resilience. Life is unpredictable, full of challenges, setbacks, and misunderstandings. But when your identity and your choices are rooted in purpose, external circumstances lose their power to derail you. You navigate adversity with composure, confidence, and focus, knowing that your worth and your trajectory are determined by your actions, not by others' perceptions. Every choice you make without justification reinforces your ability to persevere, adapt, and thrive. In this space, you begin to realize that explanation is often a mask for doubt. By removing that mask, you reveal your true strength. You stop shrinking to fit expectations, stop apologizing for ambition, and stop negotiating your potential. Instead, you act boldly, with clarity, conviction, and courage. You let your results speak for themselves, your integrity guide your decisions, and your authenticity define your presence. This is where true freedom emerges, the freedom to lead without compromise, to create without hesitation, and to live without apology. It is the freedom to act decisively, to pursue your vision relentlessly, and to cultivate influence naturally. Every choice made without explanation becomes a declaration of self-trust and personal authority. You stop explaining, start showing up, and in that space, you unlock the full magnitude of your potential, presence, and impact.